The greatest leap we take with AI is not technological, it's philosophical. Bernard de Sa, The Future of Superintelligence. This is my audiobook review. I'm your host, Jacob Shymanski, and producer Ramya Amuthan is here too, because we've got updates on something that every listener of audiobooks really ought to care about. Rems, we have AI narration updates from Audible.
That's right. It's a big one, which means the conversation is going to be big as well.
People are riled up. So here's what's happening. Since 2023, there's been a platform for self-published authors who have their books on Amazon's Kindle library to convert those books into AI-narrated audiobooks to be available on Audible. So only self-published on Kindle. Relatively small portion of books that are out there. Now, as of May 2025, a few select traditional publishers can now have access to those same AI narration tools. This is a big deal because traditional publishing represents somewhere between 60 to 80% of the industry. But more importantly, in my opinion, is that they hold all the big high profile authors and titles.
Right.
And so it's just going to take one of them to pull the trigger and say, this book that we would normally do as an audiobook that we would absolutely do with the human narrator, we can just save a couple bucks and do it using this Amazon platform. And we'll just have to see if people accept it. And then I think that's the next hurdle, is our listeners going to accept it? And
listeners are already piping in with their absolute vocal, candid thoughts. There's been so many articles published already on the first reactions and perspectives of what Audible's doing. And it's all over the spectrum, right? Like, we'll talk about it. But your initial angle of leaving it up to the publishers, right? And then kind of waiting with bated breath to see which big player is going to react in what way. Do you have any thoughts on where it's going to go or how it's going to go?
Like a prediction?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Or like, who's going to do it first?
There are some important decisions that still need to be made from Audible, from 11 Labs, from Spotify, and from all the big publishers.
Okay.
Publishers need to decide if they want to engage with this. There's going to be a threshold for how small a book needs to be. And by small, I mean a book that just doesn't have that much marketability.
Yeah.
They have to set the threshold for what gets AI narrated and what gets human narrated. And I hope that threshold is very high, right? I hope the vast majority of books still get human narration, but that threshold needs to be set. That's one of the decisions that needs to be made.
Okay.
2, Spotify and Amazon have to make the decision on how to label these things and how they want to market. But most importantly, are they going to be the same price? And right now, it seems that they are the same price as a normal human narrated audiobook, meaning that they value AI narration just as much as human narration. And I am not cool with that, because I think every single person on earth values human narration more than AI, except Audible and Spotify.
Right. And even them, we're not sure where we're putting the basis on saying like they don't value it as much as human narration. I think as distributors, Spotify and Audible are thinking long game, bigger picture, it's cheaper to produce, right? And that's what everyone's saying. It's cheaper to produce, it's mass producible, and it's more accessible, period. Like, they have, they're going to translate to 100 different languages, or there are 100 different AI voices available with this move. And there are translations of the most used languages available as well. So your AI voice can read you the same book in English or Spanish or French or German or whatever. And those kinds of things make the books themselves more accessible. So it's that next step of the conversation of making books more accessible to more people in more ways. It used to be just, if it's an audiobook, it's accessible. Now it's like, okay, what type of audiobook? How fast can I get it? Can I get it where everybody else is getting it, right? These are the conversations we're having now.
if you were to make a pros and cons list, at the top of the pros list for AI narration is accessibility.
Yep.
Right now, not even 10% of published books are available as audiobooks. That's tiny.
That's so shocking to me.
It's really not a lot.
It's so shocking to me. Like,
less than 10%.
how many people do we talk to on this show who exclusively listen to audiobooks? How many
Yeah,
people with
seriously.
print disabilities, right? And we'd think like we have a decent representation, but I guess to a lot of people, that's still not the case.
And think of it this way. Less than 10% of published books are available as audiobooks, but audiobooks represent more than 10% of sales in the industry. How crazy
Interesting.
is that?
Yeah. There's some discrepancy there. But yeah,
Mhm.
this kind of thing will make a dent in that though. Like we will see numbers start to change, I'm sure, with this move from Audible. But okay, so go back to your pros and cons list. So the biggest pro is that we make it more accessible.
Well, let me elaborate on accessibility.
Mhm.
And you touched on it very briefly, and this is a really big one. It's the speed at which AI narration, AI narrated audiobooks can get produced.
Yeah.
It is really annoying, not just for listeners, but for publishers to have to wait for an audiobook to be produced. It can take months,
Mhm.
especially the editing phase. Um, and on top of all that, there are certain books, like for example, nonfiction and manuals, where I think the quality of the narration just doesn't matter all that much, to be honest. Especially nonfiction. Fiction is another story, and I will get to that a little later. But accessibility is for sure the number one benefit of this. And translation, not they haven't released it yet, but later in the year, later in 2025, Audible is going to release a beta for their AI translation tools, which will go hand in hand
Yes.
with these new AI voices that they're making available to publishers now.
Yeah.
Translation is an incredibly laborious job. It's an art form, and anybody who speaks multiple languages will tell you that Google Translate is quite bad. That said, Google Translate is not the best translation engine.
No.
They're getting better and better, and there are some professional softwares that do a really good job of translation. And this is one of those things that is not my field. It's hard for me to judge, but just like gut feeling is AI translation couldn't possibly be at the level of human translation, right?
Probably not. But we will be more forgiving, I think. We
The
would be
problem,
because of the availability of it. Like if I can pick a book that I want to read or something that's just making waves and I can get it in the language that I want it to be in, just for the pop culture side of it, I think we will start becoming more and more forgiving. Like how long do people wait now for translations of books? Or how often?
ages. It can take
Yeah.
years.
And like you said, the job itself, like it's multifaceted, right? You're talking about not just translating, but good translations. You're translating poetry, and
Yeah, good luck.
prose and story. Yeah.
Yeah, if you try to do a direct translation of prose or similes and stuff, like sometimes that doesn't translate at
It's not the
all.
same as like
What
translating a
translators will do
conversation.
is they'll write there in like entirely new prose, entirely
Yes.
new
Yep.
similes that
Yep.
just work in that language. And that's where you really wonder how the translation is going to work out. That said, you have to choose between, do you want something that's completely unavailable in your language
Hmm.
or unavailable as an audiobook, or something that's available as an audiobook or
Exactly.
translated, but done mediocre, right? Because
Exactly.
that's what generative AI is for the most part.
Yeah,
It's
we're still
mediocre.
on the black and white of it, right? Like we're still trying to figure out if we would choose yes or no to these questions, to these broad strokes questions, at least on the translation level. Like if the availability is there, of course we're going to start using it. But then there are a lot of people taking part in the ethics conversation as well, right? I'm sure we'll get to that though.
Let's get to that now, actually.
Okay.
So the Guardian had a really good article about this whole situation called "Audible Unveils Plans to Unveil AI Voices to Narrate Audiobooks." And it cited a few narrators and authors and their thoughts on this. Kristen Atherton, who's a narrator. She has over 400 titles on Audible right now. She makes a really good point here. She says human narrators actively sell audio content by being good at their jobs.
Yep.
That's the selling point, right? For audiobooks, for a lot of people. We get a lot of comments on the show of people saying, like, I will listen to anything by this narrator.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
It's not just a book in a different format. It's its own art form, and people buy it because of that. If Audible and Spotify are replacing books that would have otherwise been done by human narrators, you could argue that's kind of a bad business move.
Yeah.
Because they're ridding themselves of the opportunity to sell that art form, to sell the art form of narration.
The easy crushing point here is, though, like the counterpoint to that is now with tech like 11 Labs that a lot of people might be familiar with, you could just take a sample of someone's voice and make it into whatever you want. You know, now you got your favorite voice narrating X, Y, and Z, everything on the planet. So again, we come back to the ethics of the conversation, but the actual credit doesn't necessarily need to go to people anymore. And we got to start thinking of like the quality of an AI voice. Is it going to match the human voice? And you mentioned The Guardian. I was reading a piece on Tech Radar, another article. It's titled Audible's AI narration sounds impressive, but I'd rather hear the story told by a human. And this is the part I wanted to read to you, okay? Good enough shouldn't be the standard for art. And audiobooks are certainly an art form. Great narration adds depth, color, rhythm, and even the meaning to a text. It transforms reading aloud a text on a page that you can hear to a real performance. Even if AI gets close in a technical sense, and I've heard AI audio that matches human performance for at least a few minutes, we'll still know the difference. Human narration has nuance because it has context. The narrator understands not just the definition of the words that they're reading, but the emotion and history behind it. They know the difference between a sigh of relief and a sigh of resignation. It goes on to say things like AI can approximate it, but only for a limited amount of time. It's like teaching a dog how to close its eyes, but doesn't mean the dog's embarrassed. You know, like these kind of touchy-feely things that you don't really get to understand, but you know that you're, for example, getting exhausted from reading and listening to an AI book for 3 hours.
Humans are complex communicators. We talk, you know, you can pick up the slightest implications through very subtle word choices.
Yes.
Think of body language or facial expressions. They can differ like down to the millimeter. And they're incredibly complex, right? And it's the same thing, I'd argue, with tone of voice and narration. Like humans are, just like in those other forms of communication, extremely tuned to vocal subtleties.
Yes.
Things like sarcasm and arrogance and cheekiness and resignment. These are all emotions that you can grasp just on tone of voice, not even considering the words that are being spoken. And it's not just emotions either. It's like actions as well, the physicality, the meaning of it, right? Like exertion and concentration or being distracted. You could even surmise if somebody is lying or telling the truth based on the tone of voice.
Exactly.
Those are all subtleties that we have been picking up on since the day we were born.
Yeah. And
Humans
we're
are extremely
describing
complex communicators, and AI will never live up to that. I'm confident of that, because you have to have like a soul. You have to have
exactly
human faults, and computers, AI are just computers.
And I think there's a
you need that
lot of us
human
who
element.
reject that. Like we reject the thought of soullessness or like the computer doing this. It's not just about the production quality and how well this thing can mimic what we do, but there's this part of us that, to be honest, I'm thinking like I'm waiting for it to screw up, or I'm waiting for this to feel like
Yes.
non-human experience, right? Because we're very forgiving. Like if we're having conversations with people, we're very forgiving of I don't know, people's stilted performances, or you know, it's a bad narration, but it's still human, right? Whereas if I think we're just less forgiving if it's a computer.
Why do we need to lower the bar? Right? This is the enshittification of everything. That because we're willing to, basically the baseline of quality is going to be what AI sets it at, right? And I'll be the first one to say that some AI narration is better than human narration.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
even like a 6 out of 10 human narration is better than an AI narration any day. Would you agree with that?
Yes, but what is the better, right? That's what you're asking. Like, is it better because it's human?
It's better because it's human. 100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's the ethics and the moral. And maybe part of that is just like the fear we have of this technology, and to be honest, the fear is very legitimate, right? Like, where are the people who are getting paid? This is their livelihood. Where are they going to go? What's going to happen with credit and rights, and who owns this, who owns that when it starts becoming AI? Is it better because it's easier and more efficient and more accessible, or are we losing touch with something bigger here?
Yeah, that makes me wonder how many listeners will really feel icky for listening to an AI narrated audiobook. Like, how many people really have their scruples questioned
Mhm.
when
Yeah,
they're listening to an AI narration? If it's like good enough for them, then I don't think they care that people lost their jobs. It's so disconnected. You don't see the person who would have gotten that human narration gig in the first place struggling. Like, it's so disconnected. It's why
yeah.
it's just sad. Like, on principle, I
That's what it feels like, yeah,
the
yeah.
decision needs to be made from the marketplace, from us audiobook listeners, if we're going to buy into this. These next few years are going to be so important.
And I honestly, there's a part of me that thinks we're mad about it now, or we're skeptical because, of course, right? Like, it's exponentially growing. We We're it's unprecedented, and we're worried. Like, we're worried, we're fearful, all the above. We're also excited, obviously, but there's a lot to complain about, and there's a lot to question right now. But when it becomes available, so fast forward a year, this is a normal thing now. AI narration is everywhere. All the big publishers have made their moves, and we're in it. We're in the thick of it. Do you think we're having the same level of conversation about the ethics and the moral and the principle? I doubt it, because it's like any other technology or technological outburst, and growth that happens, right? Like, that first little unlock is always the scariest. I think that we're kind of tiptoeing around, like you brought up at the very beginning, which publishers are going to do it first, and then is there going to be uptake, or are people going to protest? I don't think people are going to protest. I don't think we're going to protest as much as we think we ought to.
As you think we ought to.
Yeah, because you're
Yeah.
right. Like, it should feel icky, but I don't think it'll feel icky in a
Okay,
year.
so you're just as cynical as I am.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't
I
really
am. Because I know
think.
from a lived experience perspective, I'm not going to complain when there's audiobooks available everywhere. Let's say my Audible credit is now 2 for 1 because they don't need as much of my money anymore. So I can read more books for the price of, like, for half the price because of AI narration. Am I going to
You
sit
don't know
here and
that.
complain
They're
about
still
that?
pricing AI narrated audiobooks the same thing
Yeah.
as human. So,
But then
in a weird way, you have to keep it that way. It's kind of a blessing in disguise for people like us who are really against this. Because if you have to choose between human and AI narrated, and they're the same price,
let me
human
ask you
narrated any day. But if the AI narration is lower priced,
exactly.
I'm pretty cheap. I
Exactly.
might go with it.
And let me tell you something, or ask you something. If this wasn't a conversation about replacing a human narrator, okay? Like, this is an audiobook project. We are now replacing our favorite human narrator with an AI substitute. If this was a conversation about, hey, let's make our screen readers, our voiceover, our JAWS, our NVDA sound more human, and then we take our ebooks and read them with these absolute quality screen readers, would we be sitting on the fence about that?
No, not at all. Because you're not replacing a human job. I
Mhm.
mean, I don't know about you, but the screen reader that we use, and for the people who don't know, it's because Ramya and I are both blind. We use screen readers, use technology.
Yep.
Um, they're synthesized voices. They're not AI voices. They're kind of robotic sounding. They're
Yep.
getting better, but they still sound robotic. They're made to sound as intelligible as possible. But if they were to get more and more human, I'd be open for that.
Yeah.
Rams, it's not the same. I don't really get the
I
comparison.
think I think it's not the same right now, but there will be a point where these things overlap, where you're starting to read ebooks, because remember, audiobooks are just one way of making a book accessible for the print disabled people or
Oh,
people with different
mm,
disabilities. But if there becomes a time where, any format can be made into any other format for your accommodation or need or desire, whatever, just like WhisperSync, right? WhisperSync is a tool between Kindle and Audible where you can flip back and forth between listening to audio or listening or reading the print. So if you could kind of like toggle all of this at some point, we're going to end up in the same conversation.
yeah, and WhisperSync is getting more and more popular as well.
Yep.
And on this topic, I actually saw an ad on YouTube for what is essentially a screen reader for sighted people. They're like, you can read so many
Yes.
articles. You've
So
seen
much
this?
of that ad comes up. Yeah, yeah.
It's the strangest thing. I'm like, do sighted people not know about screen readers? This is so funny. Just get NVDA.
Right.
It's the same
Yeah.
thing.
But like
They're
text to
like
speech,
printing a
right?
subscription. Yeah, it's basically text to speech. You
Essentially.
just you draw a square around what you want read, and then the
And
synthesized voice reads it.
And there's many of us who do that now, like who don't read Braille, who don't necessarily always pick up an audiobook, but who will read ebooks with screen readers just because of pacing or other reasons.
So when it comes to generative AI, um, audiobooks and AI narration is kind of a frontier right after like graphic design and images. Uh, but there's this one quote in the Guardian article that I mentioned earlier from narrator Stephen Briggs. He's really popular. He narrated Terry Pratchett. He said, the use of AI to replace human creativity is in itself a dangerous path. And this is a principled
Mhm.
stance,
Mhm.
right? It's saying that if we like as a society come together and accept AI narration and start buying it and produce more of it and keep buying it and just establish it as a valid form of media that doesn't get this disdain that it has right now, um, we're going to have the same format, the same formula for other art forms, for music.
Mhm.
Do you want AI generated music to have the same treatment that graphic design and audiobook narration got? I don't know about that. We have to draw the line
Mhm.
somewhere. This is a principled stance. And being principled doesn't necessarily line up with the facts of the situation, the financial reasons why people are going through with this. But just on principle, I cannot help but feel that we're not going in a good path with generative AI replacing art.
Yeah, and it always starts more subtly than that, right? Like, hey,
Yes.
I'm writing something. I'm just gonna put it through ChatGPT so we can clean up, right? Clean up and edit and proofread and all that other stuff, which is
Yes.
helpful. You use it as a tool. Then one day you're tired and you're like, I'm gonna start brainstorming, and then you're like, just write the thing for me. Or some of us just start there, right, to see how, like, to test the quality of its creativity. I don't think we'll ever lose the human touch on creativity. I think we're just how do you say it? We're exploding right now with learning these tools, learning the outcomes, how far we can push it, how bad we can test it. Is it gonna get on our level? Like we're basically trying to figure out where it's at. I don't think we're ever gonna lose the human touch on creativity because that might be the only thing left after AI takes over everything. Like our QCing of like our quality checking of creativity or spinning things to be more human. The dust will settle and we'll get into something a bit more realistic and sustainable.
And the dust right now is in a giant cloud. And I think
Absolutely.
it's far from settling. And I'm going to do my best to get the message out there to not buy AI narrated audiobooks if you can help it.
Mm.
Especially like, listen, if you're like looking for your latest read and you go and look at it and it's only available in AI narration, just go like, screw that. I'm going to go find one of the other thousands of titles that's available as a human narrated
Go
audiobook.
get the ebook and use your screen reader. Come on, people.
I'd
Uh,
rather,
I do have one question for you before we wrap. Is
yes.
right now, I feel that Audible and Spotify, I guess you put Spotify in there because they're top two right now, competitively mainstream. Um, they've kind of left it up to publishers to say, "Hey, you guys, we're bringing this tool for you or to you, and you make the decision on what you want to use or not." Because they're putting themselves in the distributor light, right? They're just they're kind of hands off on that level of the
It's up
decision
to the
making.
publishers
Yeah.
now. Like, we
Yeah.
didn't make these audiobooks. We
No.
just gave you the
We're
tools.
just
Like,
giving
it's
it to
not,
you.
you
We're just
can't
getting
point to
paid for
us
it.
and blame us.
Yeah. So, do you think that they're kind of scapegoating? Like, is there going to be a point where, Spotify and Audible, things will loop back around to them having to take a bigger stance on this?
I haven't seen too much messaging on their part, scapegoating. I think it's because they have a great opportunity to scapegoat, like you described, like because they're not producing these audiobooks, like they can't really take blame for this
Yeah.
blowing up, right? That said, they both have the opportunity to distinguish themselves because it's great that Spotify came into the audiobook game in 2023 because now we actually have competition for Audible, which has basically been a monopoly in the industry since it started in 1995. And one of them could take a stance and be like, we are going to be principled about this and be very stringent about what we allow on our platform. Clearly label audiobooks, AI narrated audiobooks as such, and make it filterable and ensure that no AI narrated audiobooks get put on the platform or snuck onto the platform as human narrated.
So
Because
then
that
people
is a
are left.
problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
People are sneaking in AI narrated audiobooks and labeling them as human narrated. And there's basically nothing
Interesting.
stopping them from doing that unless somebody just points it out and
Yeah.
reports the book to Audible or Spotify. Listen, if anyone from Audible or Spotify are listening to this, you have the opportunity to take a stand on something people care about. And if you want to gain some brand loyalty, this is a great way to do it. And
And for
not just from us, but from narrators and industry types.
exactly.
They care about this. And for anyone who's listening, go out there and listen to an AI narrated audiobook. You'll see that it still sucks. You're not going to want to
It's
listen to it.
fatiguing. It's fatiguing.
That's a great
Yeah.
way to put it,
Yeah.
actually, because you can find these videos on YouTube that does like a comparison between human narration and AI narration. And
Mhm.
you're like, damn, that's pretty good. But those are short clips.
Very short.
Listen to it for 10, 20 minutes. And then you'll see like, oh, wow, this is like super one note.
Yeah.
Right. The
Yeah.
voices sound the same for different characters. The pauses are sometimes just kind of off.
Yeah.
There's a lack of subtlety there where that a human narrator absolutely would have. And it's like, one of the best things human narrators do is you can kind of tell that they enjoy reading it.
Mm-hmm.
Narrators, human AI narration just does not have joy.
And to be fair, like AI is still learning as well. I'm sure that even if it's patterned and systematic, there will be a point where the patterns are so subtle we can't recognize them. He paused this way every 20 minutes. 20 minutes is a long time. We've forgotten already.
Yeah, every third paragraph, take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna pick up on that type of
The
thing,
code's
right?
gonna be great. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Rams, thank you so much for this. We're gonna have you on the show again sometime soon. Always appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
Of course. That was producer Ramya Amuthan. We were talking about Audible's latest announcement of publishers getting access to Audible's AI narration tools. That's all the time we have for this edition of AMI Audiobook Review. AMI Audiobook Review airs every weekend on the channel at AMI Audio at 1 p.m. Eastern. It repeats every 6 hours on the channel. But we're also making ourselves easier to find. We're on all the big podcasting platforms, and that includes YouTube. I'm Jacob Shymanski. You were listening to AMI Audiobook Review. Happy listening.